Hey guys, Spanners here. I just had to hop on to do a little sprint review. I haven't got a huge amount of time, but I can't believe what I've just seen in that Brazilian sprint race scenario there, where McLaren just made things so much harder for themselves than it needed to be, and they got away with it. They just got away with it. It nearly bit them, and I'm more mad that they got away with it. You know, like when the kids make a terrible mistake, but somehow it's okay, and you go, okay, well, I'm glad things worked out, but I almost want there to have been a consequence so that you'd learn. And my feeling just coming away from it is, okay, yeah, look, they've got the result. Lando Norris got ahead, has a 2-point championship advantage now in relation to Max Verstappen, but it didn't need to be like that. It was weird. They were weird all the way through. I'm so sorry. There's no other way to describe how that went. They had early opportunities to get it swapped in a different atmosphere with a different teammate. Things could have gone differently. So I'm just going to break down what I thought about it, because honestly, I really thought it was weird. Did I say that I thought it was weird? The words I've still got ringing in my ear are, the way to win a championship is not by yourself. It's with the team. You're going to need Oscar. You're going to need the team. And that was at the Hungarian Grand Prix. By the time we got to Monza, Piastri should already have been called off. Because if you're not going to call Piastri off for the move he did at Monza, which put Lando Norris down to third place, okay, that's a decision I can respect. But then you don't make him give that place back earlier in Hungary. You already made the decision there. We want this win. We don't want to have undercut Piastri out of the way. We don't want the perception of that. We don't want to do that unfair thing to Piastri. Therefore, give it back. They chose that. And the payoff for that was meant to be, well, this championship that maybe in the back of their mind they didn't really think they were going to have a chance at, this championship will be yours, and the team will favour you with Oscar if it comes to that. Well, the payoff should have come before Monza. That's when the payoff should have come. We should never have had that Piastri move in Monza. And then you get to Interlagos, and look, Piastri, he's not been on form. He's not been on form, but he has a good Saturday and sticks himself on pole. Yeah, way too late for his championship, really. Way too late to kind of make any point about the season. And you go, okay, there's other teams where not only would you swap the position, but you'd also be a wingman. So Piastri, I was not expecting him to be a wingman, but I was expecting that if they were 1-2, they would just get it swapped. Why make it as close and as stressful as it was today? So, okay, so let's look at the start. So you've got Verstappen in a very dangerous position directly behind Lando Norris. Now, my theory is, and I think it's slightly wrong for the sprint races, but I think it will apply for this following qualifying and the Grand Prix, is that Red Bull will prioritise their qualifying pace. See, there's too many types of session. So I think now, towards the end of the season, they're generally going to be weaker on race pace and prioritise getting a good grid spot. For whatever reason, in the sprints this year, so Austria, and what was the last one we had? Was it Kota? Then in the sprint race, they've actually had good race pace. And I find that fascinating. So their deficit on race pace compared to McLaren seems to be towards the end of a Grand Prix distance, whereas that is not a factor in the sprint races. Could be to do with different times of the day as well. I'm not totally convinced on my theory with that. So I'm not expecting that race pace to be a factor by the end of the Grand Prix tomorrow. But today they had pace. They obviously have some decent qualifying pace. They're not miles off, but it wasn't outstanding either. But he's close enough to have a nibble. So that's what I think their tactics are. Be as far up as the grid as you can, and you can really be aggressive. And we were so close to Max Verstappen because he locked up so close to him nibbling and hitting Lando Norris. And that would have been massive drama. And that would have been very clearly Verstappen's fault because he's locked up and he's out of control. But they might have both gone out of the race from there. And that would have only benefited Max Verstappen. So now any contact between Verstappen and Norris benefits Verstappen because it's one less opportunity for Lando Norris to score points. But Norris was put in an unnecessarily difficult position there. So if you were working together into Lagos, as me and Stuffy were talking about, into turn 1, it's a place you can go side by side. You can go 2 by 2 round there. Was there really any need for Piastri to cover off all the way to the inside? Now, if you're trying to win a race, 100% cover off all the way to the inside. So cover the car in P2, really make clear I'm owning the inside. I'm compromising my exit down through 2-3 towards turn 4 by doing that, but I'm keeping track position. But when it's your teammate who's in the championship, who you kind of promised the team promised on your behalf that Norris was going to have you help him win the championship. That's why you got that win in Hungary, because they pulled on the heartstrings. You don't win the championship by yourself. It's with the team. You're going to need Oscar. You're going to need the team. But there into turn 1, Piastri was thinking about, right, I've got to hold this position so I can win the race. Which feels a bit weird considering that he was never destined to win the race. If they were 1-2, they were going to swap on the last lap. I don't know what their agreement was, but Norris didn't know that, because Norris was saying, come on, what did we talk about? I thought we talked about this. Thought we were going to swap. But Piastri wanted to hold position, or the team wanted them to hold position and swap on the last lap. Now, if I'm Piastri and I don't really buy into that I need to be helping Lando Norris, then I want to leave it as late as possible to swap those positions, because anything could happen. You could have Leclerc or Verstappen catch up and overtake Norris. Do you know, I would have swapped positions. Man, I was all in on the swapping of positions, but well, now there's a Red Bull in between us, so I can't swap them now. Best I can give you is at least I don't let him take the 8 points. But just so you know, I was definitely gonna do it on the last lap. Of course, the other scenario could be that there could be a virtual safety car, and then suddenly it's impossible because you can't overtake under the virtual safety car. But do you know what? I'm gutted. I'm the most gutted, actually, Lando, because I was looking forward, actually, to giving you that place back. If it wasn't for that darn VSC, I'd have definitely given you that place back. So if you're Piastri, in the back of your head, really you're hoping for a situation where you can win, it would be politically difficult to not give the place back when asked, or to not ultimately give it back. But if you just can make the argument for staying ahead, it'd be too dangerous to swap now. Because they're too close. The more you can extend that argument, the more you have a chance for something to happen. Now, they did have gaps. So Verstappen and Leclerc had a lot of times where they were battling and holding each other back. And so there was gaps to slot into. And in the end, when the swap finally came, it was in a super awkward position. So it was in a position where really you don't want to do that, because he lost momentum and Verstappen was right on his tail. And actually that was quite interesting, because for sure I thought Verstappen was going to have enough momentum into turn 4 to make that move, because I was screaming at the TV at that time, cover the inside. For the love of all that's holy, cover that inside. And Piastri actually just held the racing line. So the straight line speed's not there, is it? It doesn't seem to be there for the Red Bull. And I do wonder whether Red Bull had to compromise that straight line speed, because if that was the beginning of the season, they were breezing past everyone, and they're not breezing past everyone. It took quite long into the race for him to have, I think, a tyre advantage over Leclerc enough to be able to make that overtake finally. But I feel like at the beginning of the season, especially under DRS, they were flying past people. So I wonder, in order to make up for what they might have lost in some rear end stability, grip and rotation, I wonder if the compromise has been a little bit more downforce. Guessing a bit, but we do have Matthew Summerfield. Hopefully we're begging for a tech time with Matt and Summers during this little break coming ahead. But where was I? Okay, so he couldn't get past Piastri on the final lap. But there was some weird things going on with that VSC as well, to be honest. So Hulkenberg pulls over, and you go, there was no real difference between where Hulkenberg was when it first happened and then where he ended up 2.5 laps later. why did it take 2.5 laps to decide to call the virtual safety car? Because it's just a button. So you can call a virtual safety car and then half a lap later, you can call it off. It's not like a safety car where you have to bring the pace car out, have everyone line up behind it, have this whole, kerfuffle. It's easy. You press it, it's on. Everyone has to hold their gaps. And whenever you're ready, just go green. So they could have just hit the VSC and they go, oh, well, he was able to roll clear. Okay, well, unhit the VSC. Then there's no real issue there. But it's completely saved McLaren. Because if they'd have hit the VSC and then presumably the VSC period would have been roughly the same amount of time, it's touch and go whether there would have been enough time for Piastri and Norris to do their last lap swap. So there's a few things I don't really understand there. So, but from McLaren's point of view, if they'd have got that swap just done earlier, then none of these things could have been an issue. So it was super worrying when Verstappen got past Leclerc and then actually had the pace to get on the back of them. That was just unnecessarily stressful. If the VSC hadn't come out of it at all, were they going to let Verstappen get all the way onto the gearbox? And then that swap is really, really hard to do. And they had plenty of opportunities to do it. So the other concern then, of course, would have been if that VSC had come out at sort of the proper time, then they're stuck line astern. And I always notice that Verstappen seems to know the system of the deltas and always seems to be able to benefit. And he certainly doesn't lose from those gaps under virtual safety car. So I just found that whole thing really, really befuddling. And you go, the political situation there is just so awkward and clumsy. At this stage of the season, there's 4 Grand Prix left. What are you doing? A, just stay on the outside. Hold your line, stay on the outside, allow a move into turn 1. Just allow it. You can definitely do that in Interlagos. And you can compromise you don't even have to compromise your exit when you do that because you're up high and you can shoot down the hill. And all you're really doing is just going, the inside car on turn 2, at turn 1, the number 2 car, sometimes it gets down the inside at Interlagos. Yeah. And then you slot in behind and that's you. And then go. And they're squabbling behind. That's fine. But actually, the reason Lando Norris was in danger of being hit by Verstappen in the first place was because Piastri held that very tight line and compromised himself on the exit. Then Lando Norris has to go, well, I can't sit behind him on the inside line. There's no point doing that. I may as well go up high and pop myself out to a point where I've got air in front of me to break into. So that was just silly. I mean, like I said, there are other teams, there are other environments where that would have happened. Piastri just holds the high line, allows the overtake to happen. And the worst case scenario, if Norris isn't able to take advantage, you're still on the power through turns 3 and up to turn 4. So I just found that it's unnecessary. That shows that Piastri is going to do the absolute bare minimum. And of course, you get replies on Twitter saying things like, well, why doesn't Norris just drive faster? Why doesn't Norris just have a faster car? Just be better than Piastri then. And that comes up on the rare weekends that Piastri finds himself ahead. And they're rare weekends. And that's why it's not Piastri fighting for the title. Maybe next season it will be. But this season, it's rare. It's rare that Piastri he's good enough to be sometimes faster than Lando Norris. And that's costing them championship points at the moment. Yeah, Hungary, I think you can argue that was where they were laying down the groundwork of their philosophy. Monza, to me, was way too late. It was done by then. But now it should just be sorted because, at least he was there to take away a point in between him and Verstappen. But I don't think that's going to change. And I think that if he's ahead in the Grand Prix, you're going to hear a lot of politicking on the radio. I think it's going to be just as awkward. I mean, statistically speaking, from performance, he's going to be behind Norris. It's not going to be an issue. But surely if he's behind Norris, they're going to say, don't attack, don't lunge, don't make a move, hold station, stay behind. They are, aren't they? They did say to Piastri, if he makes a move, don't fight him too hard. It should just be don't fight him at all at this point in the season. Norris has been the better driver over the course of the season. That's why he's that far ahead in the championship. And it's hard to blame Piastri because he is saying, I will do what the team tells me. But how forceful are they being? Because Norris obviously thought there was a plan that they would swap positions. And somehow that plan turned into, we'll do it at the last possible second after multiple opportunities to go wrong, for things to go wrong have passed. So the plan changed between what they talked about in the briefing, it feels like, and what happened afterwards. So obviously I've not heard the interviews. I'm literally just jumping on now and having a chat with you. So sorry if I've missed something. I just wanted to kind of get that off my chest because it was weird. It was just a weird one. They got away with it. I'm mad they got away with it. All right, a couple of other little talking points then. Don't you remember all the discussion about Carlos Sainz? Where was Carlos Sainz's pace? Where was he? Where was he in qualifying? He's the stronger driver. Everyone's saying after last weekend's spike that he was. It was foolish. Have Ferrari made a mistake letting Carlos Sainz go and replacing him with Hamilton? We don't really need to talk about Hamilton's race. Oh dear, oh dear. But Carlos Sainz, this is what we're talking about in the peakiness of performance. He's almost like a sprint weekend, really. You get 6 of them a year and then you don't think about them for the rest of the time. But this wasn't a Sainz weekend. And I wonder whether there's something about the way Carlos Sainz sets up the car where he's going for a lower percentage, like something that might work. And if it works, well, I'm going to be above Leclerc. And Leclerc's maybe going for that more general, like, here's the sort of setup approach that's going to work a lot of the time. Whereas Sainz is like, well, it might not work every time, but when it does work, it's going to be amazing. And I wonder if George Russell does that as well. Hey, in fact, this is all guesswork, but someone from the inside, DM me at Spanners Ready. If there are drivers out there who regularly will go, well, this setup might work because you do it on a Friday. And you do it on a Friday and then you lock into Parc Fermé for qualifying. At that point, you don't really know what the conditions exactly are going to be like. You don't know the exact track temperatures. You could kind of go, wow, this setup will be brilliant if that rain that comes, that's the most simple kind of gamble, isn't it? You go, what if we set up more for rain? What if we set up that there's going to be a bit of cloud cover and the temperature is going to drop? What will that look like? Let's gamble on cloud cover. But for whatever reason, Sainz goes back to looking substantially slower, and he looked substantially slower than Leclerc today. So it's gone back, and that's the norm. So that's what normally happens. But when he has a fantastic performance, which he did last weekend, people get excited. I'm perfectly happy with that. Like, just go, yeah, what a great race. But this is the normal. Okay. What else happened in that race? The Williams was a rocket ship and kept Lewis Hamilton behind. So as if his qualifying wasn't bad enough, he then got hung out to dry by the Haas's. And that happens as well. So everyone's kind of taking that outside line into turn 1. That's a perfectly acceptable line. But then the Haas's just came across and he had to pull out. But then he got stuck behind the Williams. So the Williams basically not running any aero, slippy in a straight line, and another miserable weekend there for Lewis Hamilton. Ollie Behrman looked strong. So Ollie Behrman jumping in because Magnussen's sick and looked on pace with Hülkenberg. So that bodes well, at least for Haas, that they haven't made a terrible decision. So interested to see how he does in the Grand Prix as well. And the last thing, since we're on that kind of Sainz, Colapinto general angle, is there was reports. There's loads of reports after Christian Horner got seen leaving the Williams garage that he's negotiating with Christian Horner. Now, there's an assumption, that Horner is negotiating with James Vowles. There is an assumption that is to release Colapinto and to drive somewhere in the Red Bull stable. So either AlphaTauri or Red Bull. But then we've seen some press coming out of Brazil that actually it's to release Carlos Sainz from his contract. So if they release Carlos Sainz, if Carlos Sainz has an actual clause in his contract, yes, I'll sign for you, but if a Red Bull seat or a Mercedes seat comes up, you have to let me go. I don't know if I'm making up that I heard that, but I saw it somewhere. It might have been from a Formula Nerds tweet. But if that's the case, and they're coming in, they're negotiating, and they say, well, we're going to take Sainz for 2025, presumably in the second Red Bull seat, then that's fine for Williams. I think that's probably win-win, because as I was saying to, probably Kyle, to Scott, if Colapinto had come along earlier and shown this kind of form, I think they've gone, I think we're all right. Maybe we don't need Carlos Sainz. And I'm assuming Colapinto is going to be cheaper. So, all right. I don't think Williams will be unhappy with that. Give Colapinto a full race seat at Williams. Sainz can go and fulfill his destiny at Red Bull, because that sort of has felt like that was his original destination anyway. And I think as new Colapinto fans, I think I was a Colapinto fan before it was trendy. I know you're all on board now. Colapinto at Williams against Albon, for me, I'm happier with that as a first slugfest. Let's see Colapinto go in there and have a really solid season, finish ahead of the championship, against a well-regarded driver, and move on from there. That's a perfect scenario for me. I would not want to see Colapinto up against Verstappen. I don't know if it's a fair fight if he's up against Verstappen. It's definitely as a clear number 2, whereas at Williams he can get stuck in for sure. That's definitely going to be equal status, and he can get going. There was one thing from Colapinto that made me so sad, and so I don't know if the translation is correct, but he was talking about what it's like to be a young driver in Europe, being far away. And he was like, yeah, it's not being far. It's not the fact it's far away or the fact that, you're away from your friends and family. He says, when you've had a bad day on circuit, you come back, there's no one to hug you. And he said, that's the hardest part. And you go, oh no. So everybody, let's make up for it. A collective F1 fan space hug for Franco Colapinto. All right, that's it, really. I just wanted to jump on, hit record. I'm now off to go and see some oval racing in Suffolk. And it's crazy. I saw it in the summer before, and that was crazy enough, but it's damp now as well. So there's some demolition derby. There's some like proper sports car short oval racing. And then it ends with a caravan destruction derby. So they all tow these caravans and just drive through each other. It's crazy. And there's some serious racing there as well, though. And this is interesting. In the UK series, it basically goes, clockwise? I think so. Clockwise. And then when the American cars come on, they go anti-clockwise. So it's quite interesting. They go, both ways around the circuit. If you can find they go around the country. If you can find some short oval racing, that is a good time. That's a good family day out, that one. All right, we will see you for the main Grand Prix tomorrow. I think we're going to be up and running at about 9:15 UK time for the live stream. We've got Matt and we've got Jono from Australia, because the timings are good there. Until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was the Missed Apex podcast. What Spanners reckons about the sprint thing. Bye.